I wonder if you've ever felt in between places, in between maybe health and unhealth, maybe between jobs. Maybe you're in between in a tricky place in a relationship with someone. Maybe you are a young person in between the place that you are now and kind of where you want to go in your life. Maybe you've ever experienced being in between with needing certainty, but not quite having it the way you need it. My life has felt many in-betweens. I can relate to a lot of these, but also being part of a military family that moved every 3 years. When people would ask, where are you from? I would always, Kirsten, you know what I'm talking about, military brats. We'd always say, well, that's complicated. We've always sort of lived in between. Also, at being Latino and white, you're not quite this or that. You're sort of in between places. This is tricky. I wonder what your in-between experience might be. The gospel reading places the story of Jesus and these lepers in between places. If you paid attention, it said the region between Samaria and Galilee. Stories of traveling between places should be familiar to the people of God. Remember the Exodus, where God's people are delivered, but they're between slavery and captivity in Egypt and the wilderness or the promised land that God would finally bring them to. 40 years spent in between. In Luke's telling, Jerusalem, where Jesus is heading in this story, symbolized absolutized religious, intellectual, political, and economic power. To be in Jerusalem would be to have arrived. This is the center of power in the Jewish world. Galilee was the sticks, the barrios, the outside. Where exactly is that? Where are you from? Galilee was excluded from those centers of power and respect. They were the borderlands, the region of Galilee. My family's from El Paso, a town named not because it's necessarily a place, but because it's between places. It's literally the passage from here to there. And in that place, unlike many other places, those borderland regions are actually really unique. They know what it's like to be in between. There's something beautiful about El Paso and those border towns. There's a tension there as well, though. Not quite here, not quite there, in between. That's the kind of place that we find Luke's story in this morning. Luke emphasizes the story of Jesus as the story of God who travels from the margins of society to the centers of power. And much of the gospel readings, much of the stories that we learn from Jesus are in these traveling, journeying, in between places. It was said of where Jesus came from, can anything good come from that place? That's how outside, marginalized this place was. Jesus himself was born a refugee living in Palestine's barrios, essentially. Headed to Jerusalem's temple is his life and ministry. In the book Galilean Journey, Virgilio Elizondo writes, it's not so much Jerusalem alone that is the focal point of Jesus' salvific way as the tension between Galilee, marginal existence, and Jerusalem, established existence. In Luke 17, we see this tension unfold. I'm going to read a portion to you. It says this: as he entered a village, 10 lepers approached him. Keeping their distance, they called out, saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. Now, lepers in those days suffered not only a terrible disease, but were also made responsible for keeping people away from them, from keeping people from getting infected by that disease. And they did this by announcing that they were near. Unclean, unclean. Sort of a scarlet letter, right? And they did this to keep their distance from people who did not have leprosy, to protect them. Among them, this group of lepers was a Samaritan leper. This man carried a double exclusion in his life. Samaritans were ethnically mixed. They were already barred from Jewish worship, living in a region Jews traveled between from Galilee to Judea. Add leprosy on top of being a Samaritan, and he becomes invisible, even among the invisible. We call this intersectionality, right? You know this term? Because we have layers and layers of identities that are intersecting in this man's body that make him doubly excluded. Yet this diseased, half-pagan foreigner with no legitimacy becomes the example in God's great reversal. What does that say about God? Wow. Give me a second here, Alvin. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. Where shame had kept them at a distance, where shame had kept people like this man, double excluded, at a distance, Jesus comes close enough to not only hear his cries, but to heal him. This is our God. Jesus tells them to show themselves to the Jerusalem authorities. Go show them the evidence of the power of who I am, the power of my healing voice, and what I have done to you, excluded, and brought you near. Go show them the evidence in your own body. Jesus tells them to go to those centers of power and reveal the work of God in them. But out of the 10 healed, out of these 10 lepers that have been healed by Jesus, only one returns. Isn't that interesting? And of all people that's going to return, it's that doubly excluded one, that Samaritan leper, praising God. No longer screaming, unclean, unclean, and keeping his distance, but actually throwing himself at the Messiah's feet, the one who healed him, in praise and in thanks. What the world had kept away and invisible, Jesus' healing power drew close and made seen in his healing. Yes, in God's kingdom, there are foreigners. We, in fact, are those foreigners. We don't belong or have some birthright to God's kingdom except through the work of Jesus of Nazareth inviting us in. This is good news. We were once the outsiders. We are diseased by sin. You could call that the leprosy of sin. And we are offered healing by Jesus, this Galilean. We are rescued, healed by him, brought into this life-giving company of God's presence. And yet, all the trouble of our lives are not resolved, right? When we become Christians, when we're baptized, we come out of that water, we're like, oh, sweet, all my bills are paid, and I don't have any stress. All the trouble is just melted away. No. We do have a new life. We are saved and yet are still living in a world of trouble. We are yet being saved. Y'all tracking with me? You know what I'm saying? We are given new life and yet still assured of the hope that we have in the future that Christ is bringing about. We are still on the way. We are being saved even in the midst of our struggle. And as disciples, we walk with a Galilean in that world in between, that troubled place between here and there, a world full of trouble. But friends, this is where it gets really interesting. This is where I personally, Shawn, feels the good news resting in my body. That in that world of in between, that world of trouble, God chooses to meet us there. God doesn't stand far off and say, when you get it together, hey, me and the angels over here, we got it all resolved. Y'all good luck getting here. No, God has emptied himself, humbled himself, entered into our trouble and walks with us, guides us, goes before us, walks behind us. God is with us in Jesus of Nazareth in that wilderness. And God does not avoid the tensions of our lives or of this world, but navigates those troubles, those tensions with us. You are not alone, friends. In whatever trouble, whatever in between you find yourself, you're not alone. Jesus walks with you. And as he does, miraculous things happen when we walk the way of Jesus in these troubled places. He leads us from places of marginalization to places of healing. Jesus leads this world from places of injustice to justice, things made right. Jesus walks with us between brokenness and broken things and troubled worlds to a place where God will make all things new. This is where the Lord leads us. And this pattern, if you doubt me, I don't know why you would, but this pattern is all over the Gospels. If you read the life of Jesus, you will see that every time he is faced with those who are rejected, those who are detained, those who are excluded, those who are deprived, Jesus puts his body in solidarity with them. Every time. I've already told you guys how seeing this in Scripture has changed my life. But this is who Jesus of Nazareth continues to be. Again and again, we see this example. We see this Jesus, who refuses to cooperate with the arrangements of inequity, the arrangements of injustice, the arrangements of exclusion. Jesus does not compromise with ever. Sometimes that offends us. It certainly offends the world. But again and again, Jesus the Galilean travels through those in-between places, looking for those that society would rather lose. Jesus has eyes for those in society that we would rather overlook and ignore and keep out. Jesus draws near. And in doing so, he repeatedly offends social norms and inhumane laws he could care less for. Whatever it takes to find those he can heal, Jesus will find them. Whatever it takes to see them, to know their name, to bring them home in him, Jesus will do. And in fact, friends, we know the lengths to which Jesus will do this, even death on a cross. This will put us at odds. If we follow that Jesus, this will put us at odds with a nation that would rather fund a nearly $11.3 billion force allowed to racially profile, detain, and abduct our neighbors. It'll put us at odds with how our neighbors are arranged with this residue, this history of redlining here in Austin on I-35. Our urban planning is already working against us. It may put us at odds with ourselves when our own shame because of addiction or mental health or health in general or finances or maybe your place in life or your view of yourself, it'll put us at odds with ourselves in that shame. That shame that tells us to stay away from others. I'm not like them. I'm not good enough. Following Jesus, the Galilean, will navigate us through those tensions of the in-between places and bring us home with him. But like the Samaritan who came back praising God, those who've been welcomed are called to see and welcome other people just like them. Especially those our world has given no place. Those no place people that we once were are now joining Jesus in that mission to go make places for others with him, to make space for others with him. And can I just do a little sidebar here? This room is filling up. There will be a point in which we're going to have to make more space for people just like us. Heads up, okay? Don't say I didn't warn you about 2 services. It's great. I don't want to hear it. Don't email me about that. We join God in that work of opening up and making space for more people just like us. I'm thinking exactly of this community's superpower that comes to this table and is transformed and then extends that love of God to their neighbors so radically. You guys do this better than any community that I know. This is your superpower. Where are those in-between places in your life? Places I know nothing about. I don't have your life, your job, your family, your relationships. But I promise you, right where you find yourself as your life, as you have it, you are in some in-between places with some in-between people that need to hear an encouraging word, people that need to be seen, people whose names need to be uttered on your lips, people who need to be invited into your home. It may be even inconvenient or costly. But remember the example of Jesus of Nazareth. Remember the Spirit that's been given to you here. Imagine the transformed person that you are to go with Jesus to see these people and to bring them home in God. Where are those in-between places in our neighborhood, in your life? Where are they? I wonder where they would be for you. What would it look like for you to not only be healed and brought home, just like that leper, but then to return to Jesus' feet in praise and thanksgiving, and then to join him in that same work of including, seeing, and bringing home others? Friends, if we had the audacity, the courage, if we knew that we as children of God have been empowered to do just that, took that so seriously that we rearranged our lives and did not fear offending the arrangements of our neighbors and our societies that say, no, here are the borders, here are the lines, here are the walls, here's how we keep people away. If we did not care about any of that, but cared about following Jesus, we would see a transformed community and neighborhood for sure. And not because we're smart and we got all this willpower, but because that's where Jesus of Nazareth leads us today. I'm certain of it. I know it. And so this morning we have this opportunity. Are we going to be the kinds of people that put our trust in this Jesus who travels in between and leads us to all that God has promised, reconciled, made new, and healed? Amen.